We were on a pickup truck uh, escaping from central Rwanda, from Kigali, going to the western far end of the country. Actually, we were going somewhere near Congo, and we were going to take shelter there. And we got stopped at a roadblock. And at the roadblock, they pointed me and my mother out and pulled us out the truck and left everybody else on the truck, and took me to one side of the street and took my mother to the other side of the street. The guy looked me in the eyes and said, "Say goodbye to life." And they walked us away from the street and took us to this storage shed. And while we were there, a bunch of neighbors rushed in and started arguing with them. Well, from a distance. They didn't actually come close to where we were standing, because these guys were armed to their teeth with grenades, guns, and machetes, and clubs, all kinds of weapons. And the people from the neighborhood came and basically started yelling at the guys and saying, "Leave them alone, stop killing people." And they distracted them for a little bit. But then they looked back at us and they said, "Oh, you know, go talk to those people over there, tell them to give you shovels and start digging your graves." And so while all that was happening, the truck had been ordered to leave. And whenever that happened, you knew that you were not going to make it past that point, because every time somebody got pulled out of the truck, they were killed. And every time they pulled you away from the rest of your company and the rest of the people you were with, they were going to kill you. And so we knew we were going to get killed, and I was shaking and shivering, and my stomach was bubbling, and at some point I became numb. The truck driver came back with two guys, and those two guys actually negotiated for hours and hours and hours, wouldn't give up. We got to this place in the afternoon, and it was pitch black outside when we finally, one of the guys who were negotiating said to the killers, he'd said something like, "Hey, you know, look at this woman and her son. They're gonna get killed somewhere down the road anyway. They're not gonna go 5 miles without getting killed. So why don't we leave them alone and let somebody else kill them?" So, and when he said this, they totally just let us leave. There was one time in this long journey where I was on a truck with a bunch of other kids, abducted by soldiers, and they took us a long distance, and you know, they were kicking the kids around, and just, you know, a lot of the kids were afraid. We were all afraid. We didn't know what was going to happen to us. We knew we were with some soldiers, and that, you know, we were most likely going to become child soldiers as a result of, you know, being taken away from our families and taken away from where we lived. And they pulled up at a church and let the kids go get water. And this was like a far distance where I couldn't recognize where I was. Instead of following the group to get water, I went into hiding in the church. And they looked for me and looked and searched, and they could not find me until, you know, they just gave up on looking, and they left. There were many times when I definitely wanted to give up and basically either, you know, say, "You know what, let me just die right now." But there was always something that pushed me to just go a little bit further. And I think it was always the thought that, you know, if I don't push through and continue to do as much as possible to help my sisters and my mother stay alive, then none of us are going to make it. And if I give up, what about the rest of them? you know. And if they give up, you know, if we all take the attitude of giving up, then what happens? You know, we end up dead. So it was always like, okay, we just made it past this one roadblock. Let's keep trying. We might just make it past the next one. And every time we made it past one, we got more and more hope to make it to a destination that was safe. Of course, that was all before we got to that roadblock where we got pulled out of the truck and made to dig our own graves. But even after that, the fact that the driver came back and actually found people to come and resist and help was another reason to keep me going and to keep us going and to just stay resilient and continue all the way to the destination. And we also got to points where, you know, we would give up hope of going to certain places. For example, after we were fully rescued and up in Kampala, Uganda, we were very hopeful that we would see my father pretty soon, who was actually in the U.S. then. But the U.S. Embassy in Kampala denied our visa application to the point where they had stamped my mother's passport with a stamp that said she couldn't get a visa from any American embassy. But we didn't give up. We continued to search through the refugee agencies. My father continued to plow through the process of getting his asylum, which actually figuring out a status that would allow him to bring his family. It took over a year. You know, during that time is when I ended up abducted and ended up in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language and didn't know anybody, but there was always somebody, a person that would come and give me some hope and keep me going because they either, you know, rescued me or provided me with the resource that I needed or an information that I needed to get me to the next destination. So just all of the different dots that I ended up at were, provided me with just a little bit more hope to get to the next destination, and ended up in Nashville in the United States as my final destination, at least from, you know, at that point in time.